Yeah. Good evening to everybody online. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ralph Chu, president of the RASC Toronto Centre, and I'd like to welcome you to our very first RASC Toronto Centre online program. Tonight we're going to be hearing The Sky This Month, presented by Blake Nancarrow, and then there will be some announcements to follow, just letting you know what's going on in the background as we all enjoy self-isolation and physical distancing. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Blake Nancarrow.
Hi, good evening. My name is Blake Nancarrow. Maybe I shouldn't say good evening. We might have people tuning in from all around the planet. It might be early morning for those in the Netherlands. So welcome all. Again, this is the Sky This Month presentation, and it's for April. It's for April 2020. I'm going to talk about things that we can see in the sky, including planets, some deep sky objects if you want to get your telescope out. There's some comets that are promising, and I'll talk briefly about spaceflight news, assuming those activities aren't being canceled. Well, I think everybody's on YouTube joining in here, and if you'd like, sign in to with your Gmail account, and you can ask questions and participate in the chat. Anything that I talk about, if it raises a question for you, type it into the chat, and we'll take those questions at the end of this session. They'll be relayed to me, and I'll try to answer those for you. So here we go. As usual, when I do these presentations, I prepare a bunch of materials. If you go to our RASC-TO.ca website right now and search for the article, or scroll down on the main page, you should see it. And the article has all kinds of information. Everything that I'm talking about here is going to be covered there, with some more or additional details and links to the various websites that I talk about. So you don't necessarily need to jot things down here or take any notes per se. But I do encourage you to visit that webpage. That will also give you access to the month at a glance calendar. That's a PDF file that you can download. And I've also prepared observing lists for some of the popular planning tools like Sky Tools or Sky Safari. You can load in lists and the suggested targets that I talk about later in this presentation, you'll have them all ready to look at. If you don't use those particular apps, I've also made the observing list available in just a regular spreadsheet. So you can get that information by a variety of means. When you're looking at the calendar, I remind you that I show things on a day-by-day basis, and there's lots of activities going on this month. And on that little calendar, there's in each day, there's little tiny icons, like the binoculars icon or the telescope icon. So I'm alluding to the kind of equipment that you'll need. If you don't need those, they'll just be an eyeball. So there's a little legend in that calendar to explain what all those symbols mean. It's a little small on my slide here, but when you download that file, you'll be able to see it printed off if necessary, stick it on your bulletin board or your fridge, or take it outdoors with you. Okay, so let's get going here. First, I wanted to talk about the moon. Usually there's a lot of press or attention given when there are two full moons in a monthly period, and I think incorrectly that second moon is referred to as as a blue moon. But on this occasion, April 2020, we get two first quarter moons. They don't go by any special name, but it's just interesting, the timing of it, how it works out. So on the 1st and on the 30th, today, and on the last day of April, we get two first quarter moons. Full moons on the 7th, And a little fact is that full moon will also be the occasion where the moon is closest to the Earth for the entire year. So the media might start talking about super duper moons again for the 7th. Third quarter phase happens on the 14th, and then the new moon, when we have no moonlight showing, of course, is happening on the 22nd. And I've got some good news there that there's a meteor shower happening at that time. So that's a nice sort of alignment, dark skies there. Some particular dates of note that you may be interested in: on April 4th, for some people living in the Toronto area, in a narrow band. It's a very narrow path or ground track. The International Space Station passes in front of the moon. So there's an opportunity to see that or video record it or try to do some rapid photos of that. Again, not everybody in the greater Toronto area or in other places in Ontario will be able to see that necessarily. But if you go to a very helpful website, calsky.com, and again, that's in my article, that'll help you determine what the ground track will be. I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail momentarily, but on the 14th through the 16th, there's going to be a really spectacular instance of the moon meeting up with planets in the morning, and I'll visually show you that momentarily. On the 25th and 26th, near the end of the month, the moon is going to pass by Venus and Aldebaran. Venus will be well past the Pleiades at that stage, but that'll be very picturesque again if you want to get maybe a photo or just view the moon and Venus together.
Ben Bram says he will record the transit and post it on the forum. Okay,
thank you. The 29th of the month, right at the end of the month, we have an opportunity to see Lunar X, and this is just a chance coincidence with a number of features on the moon and the lighting angle, the sunlight angle of the moon, where portions of crater walls or rims are illuminated while other parts are in deep shadow, and you get the appearance, if the alignment of everything works out right, that there's the letter X floating in this black sort of region on the moon. So that's happening on the 29th. So check that out if you're interested, or photograph that. It's a very small feature, so if you're looking at it through a telescope, you'll need sort of medium power and reasonably sort of high magnification with a camera lens. Now, after this presentation, I want everybody to go outside in the Greater Toronto area, check out Venus, and you'll see that it's sort of down here. It's below the Pleiades. So Messier 45 or the Subaru or the Seven Sisters, whatever you want to call it, Venus is getting very close to that. And on the 3rd, you can see it's right in the middle of that. So that's going to be really, really cool to look at, to view, or maybe to photograph. If you're visually looking at this over the next couple of days, Venus might like completely overwhelm the sky. You might not be able to see the individual stars of the Pleiades, which are normally quite bright. But if you use binoculars, if you use a small telescope, don't use high power with this, you should be able to see the stars, and you should be able to see Venus moving through the scene. On the 4th of this month, a couple of days from now, it's going to be just past the Pleiades, still be very sort of picturesque, a very nice conjunction. But on the 5th and 6th, it's moving further and further well away at that stage. So check that out. Again, tonight, it's looking like it's clear for me. I'm going to peek outside and see Venus approaching the Pleiades. Couple of other things about Venus. Venus is quite far away from the sun right now. That's called elongation. So it's about as far away from the sun as it can get. And it's also moving towards the Earth. It moves faster in its orbit than the Earth does, so it's getting closer to us. And the combination of the distance and the lighting angle means that Venus is near its maximum brightness right now. So it's stunning in the sky when you can see it. It's remarkable, like this bright headlight. So it's unmistakable there. But another interesting fact about Venus is that because it's quite large here, it's actually above the threshold of human vision. In theory, people that have very good vision, acute vision, better than or 20/20 or better vision, might be able to see the actual shape of Venus. So I encourage you to try that. People with really good vision, have a look at Venus and see if you can see the crescent shape in it or some round shape in it. It'll be obviously much, much smaller than the moon, but you might be able to pick off that crescent shape. And one more thing, one more experiment for you to consider. This is in the daytime near the end of the month. On the 26th, the moon will be quite close to Venus. And what you can do is use the moon as a guide or to help you focus on to see this bright, sparkling point of light, unmistakable in the blue sky. That's Venus. And if you carefully take away the binoculars and look at the moon with your eyes, that's the challenging bit. This might sound strange, but you have to get your eyes to focus on the moon. And when you do that, when you look at the moon, move up and left a little bit, and you might be able to see Venus with just your unaided eye in the daytime sky. So that's happening again in the daytime on the 26th. And both of those are following the sun, so it's relatively safe, but always be careful if you're using magnification like binoculars or a telescope, aiming up in the sky when the sun's around. Be careful where you're pointing. All right, moving on. Here's what I was talking about before, that the moon is going to join the planets in the morning, and this is going to start happening on the 14th. Note the date down here at the bottom, 14th of April. And this is early in the morning. This is for the early bird people. Now, I bet lots of people don't have to set an alarm and fight through traffic and commute to work right now and so on. But set the alarm anyway. Get up early, because it's going to be pretty spectacular if it's clear on those mornings, on 3 mornings, the 14th through the 16th. And when you look in the southeast before sunrise, you'll see these very bright sort of points of light. Now, left to right here, we have Mars. It's hard to tell in this image, but it's a little bit kind of orangey. It'll be pretty obvious to your eye. And we have Saturn next, moving to the right. And you can see that Mars and Saturn are about the same brightness. Saturn's much further away, but bigger, but it's kind of beigey in color, not pure white. Jupiter is unmistakable. It's brilliant. It's not as bright as Venus, but it's very brilliant compared to these other planets. And here comes the moon. It's sort of in third quarter phase or a crescent phase there. And it's in this cool arc. Now I'm going to advance one day. Let's see what happens. Now you can see the moon is kind of right underneath Saturn. So that's going to be pretty cool, pretty nice to look at. They're this elongated T shape. And let's go ahead one more day. And now you can see the moon is now well past all of those planets there. I don't know if you noticed it. I'll back up here. Watch Mars. I'll put my mouse pointer right on Mars and watch how it's moving as well. I'll do that again. So let's do that again. Here's the 14th, 15th, and then the 16th. So you can see that Mars is moving fairly quickly, not as fast as the moon, to the left of those planets. This is good news too. This means later in the summer, we're going to have Jupiter very, very close to Saturn. That's going to be spectacular. They'll possibly be in the same field in a telescopic view, depending on your magnification. My note here, you can see my bullet points show that Pluto is in the scene. Now, you can't see that, of course, with your eye. But if you were to use high magnification in this area while the sky is still pretty dark, you would see that Pluto is in that area, except you have to watch it night after night and watch for one of those points of lights that looks just like a star. You got to figure out which one of those is moving, but that would be Pluto. Anyway, bunch of planets in the area, and the moon goes through the scene mid-month. So check that out. Again, I'm not an early bird person, but I'm going to try to look at that. I mentioned that on the 22nd, when we're in the new moon phase, when there's no moonlight, we have a meteor shower. And this one is the April Lyrids here, which is pretty good. This is a top-down shot of the solar system, and the old comet passed through the solar system and has left a debris trail, and we're flying through that debris trail, and that's what makes meteors hitting our atmosphere. The whole period for the Lyrid meteor shower runs from the 16th to the 30th. So there's a pretty wide window here, a couple of weeks. But meteor showers peak, and usually it's a very sort of short peak, just a night or two when you can see this. So I encourage you to try to view the meteors on the evening of the 21st. Again, there's practically no moonlight. These are medium strength meteors. They're a medium speed here, and they're pretty reliable. We usually get pretty good rates from these meteors. They produce 18 to 20 per hour. So it's not as big as something like, say, the Perseid meteor shower. But again, we have nice sort of circumstances here. These meteors are known to produce fireballs. They usually don't generate really long, persistent trains or trails behind them, but keep watching. And a general piece of advice, don't stare directly at the point where the meteors would appear to be coming from. That's the constellation Lyra. Just go outside, bundle up, sit on a lawn chair or a deck chair, take in the whole sky, and watch where meteors pass across the sky, and then try to trace them backwards, see if they came from Lyra. And if you're photographing them, same kind of ideal, maybe put Lyra in the edge of the frame, but shoot the whole sky to get long streaks. Now, you might see some meteors going the other direction, and that could be early harbingers of the Eta Acarid meteor shower. That one peaks in May. So we'll talk about that one later. And of course, on any given evening, you could also see a sporadic meteor. So enjoy that dark moon. That's easy to do in the backyard. Try and check out some meteors. Now, we have 3 potential comets that we might view at this time. I'm referring to their official names here, which is a bit of a mouthful, but we have C 2017 T2. That's in Cassiopeia right now, is moving upward in the evening sky around 10 or 11 p.m. And will move into the constellation Camelopardalis, or the giraffe. And that should be visible in binoculars. It's big and it's fairly diffuse. So you need a dark sky. Wait until we're in third quarter or new moon phase to check that out. We have C 2019 Y1, a more recent discovery. This is also in Cassiopeia. This one's moving faster. It cuts through part of Cepheus and then ends up in the giraffe constellation again, pretty close to Polaris. And we think a small telescope will work better for that one. We also have another comet, C 2019 Y4. That's moving the other direction. That one's moving down or southward in the sky. And it is brightening really rapidly. It's sort of surprising everybody. And some people are saying that this might reach magnitude 0 or magnitude -1. And that's putting it easily within the unaided eye category. So we're waiting to see what will happen. I haven't invented this phrase, comets are like cats, they do what they want. So we'll just have to see what happens. But keep tabs on the comets by using the 2 websites that I've noted there, Aerith and Comet Chasing at the Skyhound website. Here's a quick image of where these things are in the sky. The green lines, or the green arrows, are showing you the paths of these comets. So you can see 2 of them are moving upwards, the other one's moving down, and you get a sense of their speeds, how they move through the sky, and so on. You'll notice that the T2 comet, the 2017 T2, it is very near to the galaxy IC 342, the index catalog galaxy 342. So that might be a nice wide field photographic target. There aren't a lot of deep sky objects and a lot of really interesting objects sort of for comparison or composition purposes in the Camelopardalis constellation. In fact, it has very dim stars. But anyway, try looking northward on the dark evenings this month and see if you can tag some comets. And that Y4 comet, they're saying that might get really bright in May or June. So we'll see what happens. I'm not holding my breath, but we'll try. If you want to continue to do backyard observing, stay isolated, away from other humans and so on, here's something that almost everybody in the Greater Toronto Area will be able to partake of. And in fact, people going up to the Bruce Peninsula from Kitchener to Kincardine, Barrie and Oshawa and so on, everybody in that corridor might be able to see the occultation of a star by the asteroid 38 Leda. This is going to happen on the evening of the 15th, around 10:30. It's got a very high rank, 100, so that's promising. The tricky bit with this occultation is that the asteroid is magnitude 12.1, the star is magnitude 12.3, and the drop in magnitude is less than 1. It's 0.7 magnitudes that it will change. So that's going to be a little hard to see visually. If you're very experienced, you should be able to detect that change in brightness. It should show up if you're doing a video recording of that. The duration of this will be 9 seconds. So give that a whirl. You can learn more about the occultation and other particulars and other events from Steve Preston's asteroidoccultation.com website. So that's an interesting opportunity there. So let's start talking about deep sky objects now. I have a few targets for your consideration this month, from easy through challenging ones. Given that we might be working in our backyard, I haven't given too many really, really tough targets here to go after visually. There's a few Messiers, some of the objects from the Charles Messier catalog that should be possible in a medium-sized telescope in medium light pollution. Hopefully you can see many of these. And I've got some double stars and variable stars and so on. If you're working on your certificates, if you're working on your Explore the Universe or Explore the Moon or your Messier certificate or the RASC Finest NGCs, I've got a lot of targets here. And there's a couple of galaxies that are in the Herschel 400 list as well. So let's have a look here. I'm going to start off with a constellation very high in the sky, easy to see to the south. That's Leo, our evocative lion constellation. Near the belly of the lion, kind of in the middle here, we have Messier's 95, 96, and 97. So those are 3 galaxies all pretty close together. So that's cool. Check those out. And if you look at those with a low power eyepiece, you might be able to get a couple or 3 in the field kind of thing. You do want, again, if you're going to go for this, you do want some decent sort of aperture, maybe an 8-inch or a 10-inch telescope to draw in the faint fuzzies. Also, if you're looking at Messier 105, look carefully near it. You should see NGC 3384. That's another galaxy right beside this. When I visually observed it, I found it equally bright to 105. It was clearly not a spiral galaxy. I learned later it was a lenticular galaxy. I viewed that many times. I've imaged it as well. It's a RASC Finest NGC, and it's on the Herschel 400 list. So that's NGC 3384. If we move to the hind legs of the lion, we have the Leo triplet. That's a pretty famous grouping of galaxies again. This is Messier 65, Messier 66, And another reasonably bright galaxy beside them, some people call it the hamburger galaxy. I'll show you an image of that. You may get a sense of that. That's NGC 3628. It's curious that Charles Messier didn't include it in his catalog because it's pretty obvious beside these other galaxies. Something interesting about these three galaxies is they are referred to as a group in the Halton ARP catalog. Mr. ARP studied galaxies that appeared peculiar or that were disturbed. So this is ARP 317, this whole grouping of these three galaxies. And it'll be pretty clear when I show you the image. Just above in the hindquarters here, we have another RASC finest NGC, and that's NGC 3607. So I've got a few galaxies for you to chase down from the backyard or from your nearby park. Some stars for your consideration. Of course, Regulus is the Lucida, or the brightest star in the constellation. One of my favorite double stars is Algeba or Algaiba. Here, that's a very nice, it's actually a quadruple system, but the two main stars in that, the A and the B stars, appear to be a binary system. We're not 100% sure, so we need more observations. And this is something you could help with. You could do some citizen science. You could look repeatedly, say year to year or every few months, at that star while it remains visual, and note the location and the distance or the angle the stars are from one another. And you could contribute those observations to the Washington Dull Star Database, and that's all folded into the body of knowledge that we have about that. We have preliminary orbit information. It looks like these two stars, the A and the B stars, are in a 619-year period, 619-year orbit, but we need more data. That's true of all double stars, that when we look at stars, they could be a chance alignment. So we need to study them. We need repeated measurements. This is an area of astronomy where there's not a lot of work being done, and anybody can do this. You and I can do this. 6 Leonis, down near the bottom right here. This is a very colorful double star, so check that one out. It's just sort of nice eye candy. Near to 6 Leonis, we have a variable star here. This one's mildly challenging. This is R Leo. This is a different way that you could do citizen science. It's very easy to gauge or assess the brightness of a variable star. And then you contribute those observations to the American Association of Variable Star Observers. And that's, again, added to the body of knowledge that we have about that star. This star, R Leo, is a pulsating variable star. It's an M-class star, so quite orangey or red in color. The magnitude ranges from 4 approximately to 11. So it's a pretty broad range, and that occurs over 300 days. So you need to be patient and do lots of observations for that over time. You can see off to the left here, I've noted Wolf 359. Yes, that was the scene of the Borg battling the humans in Star Trek Next Generation, but it's a real star. And what's interesting about this star is it's moving in the sky quite rapidly. Now that's partly due to proximity, that it is only about 8 light years away from us. So anything close is going to appear to be moving quickly here, but it's also just simply moving fast. And what I've started doing is imaging or photographing this star. And hopefully in a few years, when I've got 5 or 6 years of data, I'll make a little animated movie. And we can see how they're moving and shifting in space against the background stars. I only have 2 years of data, two photographs over a year apart, but I can already see the motion in those in that star, so that's kind of cool. And I've got one more suggestion for you here, way at the top above the rump of Leo. It's HD 97658. This I added for really just a thought experiment. This is a star that has an exoplanet. around it. Now, you're not going to be able to see the planet in your telescope, in your amateur telescope, but there's some very interesting facts about this exoplanet around this star. The star is easy to see. Its magnitude 6.3. It's about 70 light years away. It's a metal poor star. It's a K-class star. It's an early star. Again, it's going to be kind of an orangey color. But the planet that we first detected in 2010 and then measured quite accurately in 2012, it has a period of 9.5 days, super fast, around that star. But we've measured its diameter, and it's about 2 times that of the Earth. And the gravity is about 1.6 times. So we classify this as a super Earth. And we've detected that it has a large rocky core, and it appears to have a thick layer of volatiles around it. It might be a deep ocean, or it might be a thick atmosphere of helium and hydrogen. So again, we can't see that, but it's just cool. I like looking at exoplanets and knowing that there's some world around those. Just a couple of cautions here. If you're using Sky Safari, I mentioned Galaxy 3384. In Sky Safari, that's referred to as 3371. And I referred to 3389. That in Sky Safari is referred to as 3373. I might have flipped my numbers there, but the Sky Safari numbers differ a little bit, but in the list that I prepared, I'm using the numbers that Sky Safari recognizes. This just reminds us that there are errors in the new general catalog of galaxies, and that's one of them where there's just confusing information about that. Okay, carrying on here. Oh, I said I had an image of the Hamburger Galaxy, and there it is. So this galaxy you can see is an edge-on spiral galaxy. Again, it's that part of the ARP 317 grouping. It's near Messier 65 and 66, and it appears that these galaxies are interacting with one another. You can see that this one's a bit warped at the outer edges of it. You can see there's a distortion in the dust lanes, and you can see that there's some flaring. It looks like there's dust and wisps that are extending outwards from the disk there. So again, this is what Halton ARP considered peculiar or unusual about these galaxies. I like looking at this one because it's almost exactly the view that we have from the inside of our galaxy. Later in the summer, we're going to be looking towards Scorpius and Libra and Sagittarius, and all of these constellations are close to sort of the center of the galaxy, but we can't see clearly the center of our galaxy for all the dust that's in the way. So this photograph really sort of reminds me of that. You can see it's big too. That's a 24 arc minute by 24 arc minute view, that photograph. All right, our next target area is a constellation that's much lower in the sky. So I don't know how easy this will be for you to go after these targets. You need a good sight line. You need to be able to see clearly to the southern horizon. I'm referring to the constellation Hydra. This is big. This field of view is twice the size of what I showed you for Leo here. The interesting thing about this constellation is there are 3 Messier objects in it. Okay, let's start with the easy one. So over here on the right, we have Messier 48. That's an open cluster. I star hopped to it from Procyon. A little bit of a challenging star hop from that direction, but very nice object. It was really big. When I looked at it in a 100 millimeter telescope, I found all the stars equally bright, and I noticed a double star right in the middle of it. The John Herschel 2435 double is in the middle of that, so that's kind of nice. If you look at it, this with a big telescope, 8-inch telescope or 14-inch telescope or whatever in high power, it's a bit like the Pleiades. You're only going to see a couple of stars. You're going to cut them all off. So use low power or wide field for that. The next Messier is way over on the other side of the constellation in the tail of the sea monster. This is Messier 68. And when I looked at this, I found this challenging. I found it very faint. It's a globular cluster. Now it's a long distance away. It's 40,000 light years away, but a combination of the distance and the elevation in the sky, it's very low. All of that can make this really tough to see. And even more challenging is Messier 83 further to the left. That's a little bit lower again than Messier 68. This is sometimes called the Southern Pinwheel galaxy, and it's a face-on galaxy. It's big, it's huge, but I found it barely detectable visually. Just a little FYI, this was the final Messier that I was trying to see to complete viewing all of the Messier objects. I kept looking for this one and not seeing it clearly, so I kept trying. Now, I don't know if you have a sense of what's going on here, but this image, we're kind of looking due south. So if you were to do a line or imagine a line sort of straight up from the South Pole, that's the meridian. Ideally, you want to look at objects when they're on or near the meridian, because that means they're as high in the sky as they can be. So you can see the constellation Crater. It's sort of right on the meridian, so there's lots of cool double stars in there if you want to look at those. There's lots of things in the area like Corvus and Sextans and so on. But notice that M68 and then later still M83 is not near the meridian. So wait an hour. Wait for M68 to climb a little bit higher in the sky. Every little bit of elevation is going to help you get a better view of 68. Then wait another hour to look at M83. Just time your viewing of those objects appropriately so they're not down in the muck. And if you do get a beautiful evening, if it's really, really clear on one of those dark nights, have a go at a couple of other constellations. Do you know that we can see all of Antilla and all of Pyxis in Ontario? Lots of people have never looked at things in those constellations. I've seen a couple of double stars in there. So try for that. A finest NGC object that we have kind of back in the middle of the Hydra constellation is Ghost of Jupiter. I'll show you an image of that. That's a nice planetary nebula, quite bright. It's pretty easy to see that. And there's a few double stars in here as well. So Alphard, Tau 1 Hydra, and Struve 1347. Very nice double stars that you can check out. And Ward asked me before what that green thing is. Is it a comet over there in the middle of Virgo? Nope, that's a radiant point for a meteor shower, but it's a weak meteor shower. Don't get excited about that one. So that's just the way it came out. All these snapshots are from Stellarium, by the way. Goes to Jupiter. Here's what it looks like. So can you see that little tiny planetary nebula? It's still relatively big in the eyepiece. I've looked at this many times. This is also a Caldwell object if you're working on your Caldwell catalog. Of course, some of those objects are in the southern hemisphere, but that's Caldwell 59. I found it a big and bright planetary nebula, and when I looked at it at about 400 power, I could see, clearly a bright ring and a swirling structure within, and bright rings within, and it was diffuse on the outer edges. And if you look closely, it's not perfectly round. It's kind of a bit of an oval shape. Again, I've viewed that many times, and I imaged it with the observatory, the socially accessible telescope at St. Mary's University, the Burt Gaffney Observatory. That's something else that you can think about doing if you're cooped up or getting cabin fever, is send some jobs to the BGO observatory. You want to look at those galaxies when there's no light around, and hopefully you don't have terrible light pollution from your backyard or from your nearby city park here. It's very much a factor of the lighting and how it's managed, what the lighting fixtures are like, and so on. You can see some samples of good and bad designs in that little visual. You can do some more citizen science here if you'd like, maybe on some of those dark nights when there's no moonlight around. You don't want the moonlight to skew your results, but you can from the 14th through the 23rd, while you're looking at Leo, you can gauge the light pollution. Look at, just with your eyes, when you're dark adapted, see the faintest star that you can see, and make a note of that on paper. If you've got your smartphone or your computer with you, you can submit your observations right away online. So that's easy to do. Check out globeatnight.org for more information about how you can measure light pollution. It's something that we can all do, and it gives us a sense of what our lighting is like in our communities. And you don't need a telescope for that. If you're interested in seeing the International Space Station, it will fly over a few times this month. For the next week, basically, it's visible in the evenings. If you're a morning person, then you'll be able to see the International Space Station resume flyovers over Ontario starting on the 25th. I remind you to go to the heavens-above.com website to get the particulars or circumstances for your area, for your geographic location. There is some traffic going up and down to the International Space Station, and I keep trying to get a dual flyover. When there's a spacecraft approaching or departing station, it might also create a reflection, and then the station itself and then that spacecraft might produce a dual trail. So that's something to try, maybe photograph that or just visually observe that. That's always fun and again, easy to do. Speaking of space flight, now some things have been curtailed or put on hold or postponed due to our current world situation here. But as far as I know, all these things are still on the docket, still being planned. The SpaceX Dragon capsule that's on station right now will be returning to Earth with science experiments and various other things in a few days on the 6th. On the 9th, from Russia, the Expedition 63 crew is heading uphill on a Soyuz, and they will relieve the 62 crew who will come down about a week later. They all get to practice isolation. Well, they do that anyway. The 50th anniversary of the infamous Apollo 13 is happening. The launch occurred on April 11th, 50 years ago, and we know what happened shortly after that. All of this, you could say, all of our ventures into space, at least with humans, is attributable to Mr. Gagarin. Yuri Gagarin trailblazed for all humans on the 12th of April in 1961. He was the first human in space, of course. So we can celebrate that day. We can't do it in person, but aim towards Moscow and raise your glass. Another interesting anniversary on the 22nd is the first Canadian spacewalker, and that happened in 2001. I'll let you ponder this for a moment. Who do you think that was? I'll take your answers in the questions or the Q&A at the end. And then we have a cargo craft going up to space station to replenish on the 25th. That's a Progress vessel. And also on the 25th, we have an interesting anniversary. That is when the Hubble Space Telescope was deployed in orbit way back in 1990, the amazing Hubble. So lots of cool stuff about space flight. Some things, though, have been put on hold. The Space Launch System by NASA and the Orion, these are all on hold due to the COVID-19. The James Webb Space Telescope, this has been put on hold. And the ESA, the European Space Agency, Mars rover mission was to go this year, and they had to delay that. And when you lose your window for going to Mars, you got to wait 2 years. So now they're not going until 2022. That's just the orbital mechanics, how it works out. So here's a quick summary, highlights here for the month. The next few days, whenever it's clear, go outside and look at Venus as it goes through the Pleiades. That's going to be pretty cool. And then we know that the Mars and Saturn and Jupiter are in the morning sky, and the moon is going to join them mid-month, so check that out. We have an occultation on the 14th. We have the meteor shower on the 21st. Moon now in the evening sky at the end of the month will join Aldebaran and Venus. Venus will be well past the Pleiades at that stage. And again, check out Lunar X if you're inclined on the 29th. I've given you some Messiers, some NGCs, some galaxies, some planetary nebulas, some double stars, some variable stars to look at in Leo and Hydra, so check those out. And think about those citizen science projects that you might do at home from the backyard. And there's lots of other things like what we're doing here. There's more and more things popping up online. So check out the RASC Toronto Centre website for other events that are going on. And a late breaking one I made a note of here is that the NEAF, that's the Northeastern Astronomy Forum, that happens in Suffern, New York annually. That event, that exposition, of course, has been canceled or postponed. They're going to do their in-person thing with the booze and the vendors in the gymnasium. They've rescheduled that to September, but they've kept the date. This weekend, the 4th and 5th, they're just doing an online thing. They're going to have some of their speakers doing their talks online and so on. So that was for a fee, but they've now waived the fee. So anybody can participate online in that for free. So if you're looking for something to do, you want some new astronomy information or want to hear some talks, you can do that this weekend with NEAF. So just look up that acronym and you'll find their website. That's put on by the is it Rochester? I forget now. Group. So some shout outs here. I use a lot of tools, a lot of software, and lots of people help me out with this presentation. So there's all the credits. If you haven't already done so and you have some questions now, type those into the chat window and we can take a look at those. I don't know if anybody's in the Zoom session proper. You can type in questions there or use the raise hand. If you think of something later, you can email me at the email address that's noted there, astronomy@computer-ease.com. I'm happy to answer your questions. If you want, get out your smartphone and take a picture of that QR code or scan it, and that will take you directly to the article that I've produced for this presentation. It has all the information that I talked about, plus a few other nuggets, and all the links to all the websites that I've referred to. Or you can go to rascto.ca/TSTM for the Sky This Month, and then those numbers, 202004. Note the case of that. The URLs are case sensitive. And again, you'll find my calendar and my observing list that you can download there. And a bit of a shameless plug, check out my website if you, or my blog if you want to get other late breaking information or other astronomy facts and figures and stuff like that. I just put an update today for handy keyboard shortcut for Stellarium. So turn off the TV, get outside, enjoy nature, enjoy the night sky. Hopefully we'll get more and more clear nights in the coming month. So I'll pause here to see if anybody has any questions for me.
Don Stewart says, any chance you could list the web address for this weekend's online sessions from Rochester?
So let me just launch my browser here to do that, and we'll pull up the NEAF website. I don't have it memorized here, so I'll just look it up here. I hit it earlier today. I think I just saw it there, NEAF Expo. So there it is, neafexpo.com. Oh, and it's the Rockland Astronomy Club. So they're the group that hosts this. So neafexpo.com, that's NEAF Expo, exposition.com. Or you can go to the Rockland Astronomy Club. You can Google either of those terms or words, and you'll find the Northeast Astronomy Forum virtual session. So again, they're going virtual with this. So good question. Thanks, Don.
Not yet. Couple of thanks, Blake. Very well done.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
He's muted.
Okay, thanks very much, Blake, for that presentation. Before I launch into the announcements, I just want to thank Blake as well as our production team, Andrew and Betty Reed, as well as Ward LeGros for setting this up and guiding Blake and me through all of this. It's much appreciated, and I hope that everybody online has enjoyed the presentation. For our upcoming events and so on, unfortunately, there isn't a huge amount to report on because of the restrictions on meetings and so on, but we do have some upcoming online things to look forward to. So let me just get the next item up. Okay, so our next online gathering will be in 2 weeks from tonight. Starting at 7:30 p.m., not 8 p.m. This will be our first speakers night online, and the presentation will be by longtime Toronto Centre member, Professor Michael de Robertis from York University, speaking on intelligent life beyond Earth. And hopefully we'll get the latest considerations of the likelihood of detecting signs of intelligent life on exoplanets. Our next RASC Toronto Centre online event will be on the 29th of April, 4 weeks from tonight, starting at 8 p.m. We'll have another Sky This Month presentation, and we'll see whether we can get somebody else to also perhaps do a presentation at the same time. For those of you who are online watching this, we'd really appreciate if you post to the forum, let us know how this has worked out, and if you have any suggestions, and we'll take that into consideration as we move forward. With social distancing and with the self-isolation measures that have been put in place, it doesn't look like we're going to have much of a chance to do anything face-to-face until June at the very earliest, and maybe it will be well into the summer, according to some people. So we'd like to try and keep the connections up by doing these online presentations, giving people a chance to watch something and also get some conversations going in the chat windows. For new members who were attending First Light before the lights went out, as it were, the new members orientation program is suspended until the Science Center reopens. I had asked Charmaine and Kirsty if they would like to do the remaining First Light sessions virtually, and they said that they would much prefer to do it live instead. So we will have to just wait until the Science Center reopens before we resume the First Light program. We are thinking about whether we should be looking at other things online for members. And again, I welcome your suggestions on things that we could do. And I also remind you that we had a very successful event run by the National Society the other night online. It was an online star party. And so, we have these kinds of events that we could possibly run as well. So, again, let us know what you'd like us to try and do, and we'll see what we can do about that. Also, this is the time of year when we ask for suggestions of members who you feel have made noteworthy contributions. And so we have a number of awards that are available to present. And again, we don't know when we're going to have our award ceremony or if we'll be even able to have one this year. It really depends on what the government does with the state of emergency. But, we're happy to see nominations or suggestions for recipients of the Andrew Albans Award for Promotion of Astronomy, the Bertram Topham Award for Observing Activity, Jesse Ketchum Award for Equipment, and the Ray Thompson Award for Imaging. Also, we have the Charlene Norgrove Award for Inspiring and Welcoming Members, sort of a community activity recognition. And again, if you have any people that you'd like to recognize for any of these awards, please send your suggestions to nominations at RASC-TO.ca. And finally, we have a very restricted spring work party that is going to be held sometime in the next several weeks to do some necessary maintenance operations at the Carr Astronomical Observatory, but unfortunately, the observatory itself is closed to members for observing activity until further notice. Again, part of the challenge is that just the risk of transmission of virus at a facility like the CAO is very high, especially with the concept of communal living there. So we've decided to err on the side of safety and just stop any activities there except for necessary maintenance. So again, we'll get it back online as soon as we can, but there isn't a great deal we can do about that right now, simply to ensure your safety in our community. So that's it for now. Again, we are trying to come up with ways to maintain the connection with you and also to ensure that we can keep our community alive, and we'll look forward to the lifting of the state of emergency sometime later this year so that we can once again get together face to face. But in the meantime, we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Again, thanks for logging into the channel tonight for this program, and we'll see you on April the 15th. Good night, everybody.